So we're back with our next review of Rings of Power. We're doing season or episode 2 this time. Sorry for the delay. I meant to record this and upload it yesterday. However, my camera broke midstream. So I was not able to do this how I wanted it to. So we got a temporary replacement camera. So it does look a little bit different. Quality might be a little bit different, might be a little bit more poor, but there's a new camera coming on its way, so hopefully I get that sorted out soon. But yeah, so let's talk about episode 2. Overall, I still have similar feelings from episode 1, where it's just not a whole lot is happening. It's still semi-slow, but it's still faster than episode 1, or even it's faster than season 1 altogether. So I guess that's good. I guess there's more quality in this one, but that's because we have the dwarves again. As soon as the dwarves are in the episode is so much better. Overall quality is still kind of lacking. There's unnecessary conflict because a lot of this stuff just doesn't happen in the show, or in the books rather, sorry. And it just leads to more and more questions. And then there's we do get the big reveal of Anatar at the end, which we'll get into more detail later, which is really good. I think it's the best they could have done with it in terms of what they have so far. But yeah, so we break down the episode bit by bit here. We start off with the dwarves. They are they're now feeling the effects of Sauron's corruption, I guess. I don't know if the dwarves think it's the earthquakes from Mount Doom that erupt the foundations of the earth that cause Khazad-dûm to start collapsing, blocking out the sunlight, which is then, of course, in Khazad-dûm, that's their only real light source, which means that their grain and vegetables and fruit and stuff like that are going to diminish because they obviously need light to grow. That makes sense to me, but also it's not their only source of food. There should be a lot of wildlife actually within Moria. There's lots of creatures that they can use as a source of meat, so it's not like they're gonna starve necessarily, but it is of concern. And then of course it's even extra concern because the stone speakers, the mountain singers, Disa being the leader of them, they can't sing to the mountain anymore, or they sing to the mountain, but the mountain isn't listening to them anymore, and isn't. So there's a lack of communication. The communication's been broken. So that's kind of obviously stressed the dwarves out, which makes sense. I'm not sure if what the show though is trying to imply is that if this is Sauron's doing, or if it is truly just is it the Balrog that's doing it actually, or is it the volcano eruption that actually did do it, like the dwarves believe? That part's a little bit unclear. It's all kind of, it could be either of them, it could be all of them. We don't really know. Her connection to the ring is now growing, so she's kind of getting some foreshadowing. And there's this great scene with her seeing Celebrimbor being tied up by roots.
Are they not seeds you planted?
And quoting the ring, the poem about the rings, which was a cool scene. It was a cool sequence.
Rukshutlar tu bolshu shartishi utlost. Dugash na bolshu bukshak nampat.
And funnily enough, I think this is the most acting that we've seen come from Galadriel. She's usually very stoic and monotone, or she's just very angry all the time. So her actually like having some real emotion was just nice to see, because she did seem horrified. And then it leads to this really weird sequence that I'm kind of confused about between Gil-galad and his like elven commanders, we'll call them, and they're discussing about Sauron's whereabouts.
East. What of the whereabouts of Sauron?
Our spies indicate that Sauron was last seen traveling into Mordor. We believe he intends to supplant Adar and claim his armies.
We hear one elf mention that their spies saw Sauron go into Mordor. So because of this, they're going to attack the elves are suggesting that they attack from the east. Others are suggesting we attack from the north, from the west, come up the river, go that way. Okay, their battle plan's fine. Whatever. No big deal. But what's confusing is the spies seeing Sauron go into Mordor. This is really confusing because, one, when the spies are there, they don't technically know that Halbrand is Sauron yet. So they can't call him Sauron. They've only just learned it was Sauron, like a day or two ago? Because Galadriel has now revealed the truth. But then Sauron's not there anymore. So they saw him leave, they saw him enter Mordor, but they didn't see him leave Mordor? Or the spies just went there, saw that he went into Mordor, and like, okay, good, job done, and then they leave, and then they just miss Halbrand leaving Sauron, because he's gone now, right? He's in Eregion. We found that out in the first episode. The scouts are there, they don't know it's Sauron until they get back to Lindon. They see him leave, then the scouts return to Lindon, and that's it, or the scouts stay there, but then they don't see Halbrand leave Mordor after he's arrived. Because they also know that Adar's there, and they're talking about Adar and the conflict between Sauron and Adar. So that's all confusing as well. They think he's in Mordor. They have scouts there, but the scouts don't report that Halbrand, aka Sauron, has left Mordor. And at the time of them being there, they wouldn't even know that that's Sauron to begin with. So then if they sent scouts after knowing it was Sauron, then they wouldn't have been there for when he arrived. They only would have been there for when he left. That's, of course, if they teleport, because, as I mentioned in the last episode, the distance between Mordor and Lindon, they're on the opposite ends of the map, essentially, so it would be months of travel time. So that also just adds to the confusion. And then on top of that subject, we learn what happens to the scouts. So it goes to Sauron in Eregion saying that he wants to speak to Celebrimbor. This random elf girl says no, he wants you to leave. He doesn't want to leave yet because obviously he wants to talk to Celebrimbor. So they go back and forth.
Lord Celebrimbor regrets to inform you. He's unable to grant you entry.
Mightn't I speak with him directly?
My lord is occupied, but he wishes you good fortune on your journey.
Are you asking me to leave?
The Lord of Eregion is asking you.
Perhaps I'll just wait here. Just in case he changes his mind.
Then it leads to the scouts. And we see that the scouts or the messengers that Gil-galad sent are dead. Now they're being pulled away by chains. which, okay, we don't really know what that means right now. But then right after that point, it cuts back to Sauron quickly. As if, like, he planned this, or knew it was going to happen, or he caused it to happen, or he himself did it. Which makes this all really confusing, because not only did he leave a day later and arrived in Eregion first before the messengers, but he then, if he was involved in this somehow, which they're implying with the editing, he then somehow got past Eregion to almost catch up to the messengers to kill them, drag them away, and hide their bodies? Or get to this area, do Sauron things, whatever that means, and whether it was orcs or wargs or trolls or whatever, it just makes even less sense. So, don't know what's happening there. We then get back to... I guess we find out more information, kind of, about this cult, I'll call it, in the desert. We know we're now in Western Rune, and we find out more about this cult, and it's being led by this dark wizard, who looks suspiciously like Saruman. And I really hope it's not Saruman, because that's just going to make a whole lot less sense, and it's going to ruin a lot of stories. Now, I only say he looks like Saruman because of two main reasons. One, the beard. Saruman's beard was very white, but down the middle of it was like a darker color. This dark wizard has a very similar looking beard in terms of the color of it. It's got a darker part in the middle. And I guess it's also, he has a gray beard, but dark in the middle. So that's very similar to Saruman. But in addition to that, his hair parts down the middle, and then it comes down, it goes in front of him, and then he has a little batch of it that goes behind him, which is very similar to what Saruman's hair is. Obviously, it's just the color's different, because Saruman's is white, the Dark Wizard's is brown or black, whatever you want to call it. So that's a little bit concerning, but we'll have to see more on how that story develops. We don't really know a whole lot here other than this Dark Wizard and his cult are trying to hunt down and prevent Gandalf, who it's now confirmed he's an Istar. So that now limits the options to Gandalf, Radagast, the two blue wizards, and Saruman. Not that it would have been anyone other than those people, but just in case someone's like, oh, it's not one of the wizards, well, it now has to be one of the wizards because he's being labeled as an Istar, which is, of course, what the wizards are. And then we also learned that the Dark Wizard and his cult work with Sauron, but we don't know if they're, like, if they know who he is, if they're trying to also help him, if they're being controlled by him, or how that relationship works. They just have a line about Sauron has now changed his disguise to confuse his enemies, basically. And we know that they're, like, working with Sauron because of their, they have the symbols of the eyes on the back of, like, the desert people, and they kept referencing his power and his corruption and all that, and that they have to stop the Istar, or the stranger, from accomplishing his goal, otherwise it's going to conflict with Sauron's, basically. So, which again further implies that it's Gandalf, but we technically don't know yet. But the Istar is going to worry about the stranger, while the desert people are essentially going to go after the Harfoots. Which we find out later doesn't go well. We meet a new dwarf, which is super important, actually. We meet Narvi. Narvi is a really important character in the story, in that he's the one that helps create the Doors of Durin, the infamous speak, friend, and enter doors that the Fellowship encounters. He helps build those doors, and it's kind of like his design, along with the elves, I think, at least in the books. So just seeing him around is kind of cool. Hopefully we're going to see the doors, because at this point the doors should be built, but again, the timeline gets a little bit funky, so it's hard to see. But I think the doors should be built by now, but they're just not. So maybe we're going to lead to that point. Then we get back to Lindon, and the elves have to, or Galadriel has to talk to Elrond and convince him to go to Eregion, because she believes that Sauron's there and that he's causing problems, but Gil-galad won't let her go if Elrond doesn't agree. So she's basically trying to convince him, I'm your friend, I made a mistake, I'm sorry, please help me out here. So Elrond's kind of unsure, but he's convinced to go with her later, but only because of Círdan. Círdan, old wise elf, basically says, no, these rings are good, here's why. He shows Elrond by messing around with some fish and like, look at the power that they have over just all life in general. These rings are good for us, they can help us heal the world. And there's no, if these were corrupted, this would be doing, what I'd be doing right now would have a lot more side effects, and there just isn't any, so the rings are fine. So it's reinforcing again that the rings aren't corrupted, that they're okay for the elves to use. The one thing that really bothered me, though, about this scene is that they shaved his beard. Círdan starts the scene with, like, he's just finished shaving himself, and he's all clean shaven, and it just bothered me because he was the one elf that, like, really matched his book description. And then they immediately toss it out the window by shaving his beard off. And I'm like, why? That's his unique feature. Keep it. You wouldn't remove Hobbit's big feet because of reasons that they're uncomfortable or whatever. Like, you keep the feet. You keep his beard. So that kind of bothered me. Maybe he'll grow it back, but, like, I don't know. It's just odd. Then we go back to the Harfoots and the Stranger in the Desert. They come across a well, which they need because they've been walking for days without water, so they finally find a well. There's this one stick that's kind of just chilling near the well that Gandalf or the stranger looks at, thinking that it kind of looks like a staff, and it's very similar to the images he's been seeing in his dreams. So they get some water, they drink it. The desert raiders, I'll call them for now, show up. And the stranger holds up his staff and creates a giant dust tornado, which looks cool. Great power, great magical power. But of course, because the staff that he found isn't more than like a sheep herder's like hook, it just disintegrates from the magic, so it doesn't have enough substance to control the magic. But I like the magic. I like that we see. He loses control of it. The staff disintegrates. The Harfoots go flying off into this giant dust tornado. So we'll see what happens with them, because we don't see them again. Even in the third episode, we don't see them. Back to Eregion, where Celebrimbor now decides to meet with Halbrand. Kind of out of feeling bad, Halbrand or Sauron is creating a rainstorm, and Celebrimbor is starting to feel bad, so he's just going to go talk to himself and send him away. But through kind of manipulation and a good choice of words, Halbrand is able to convince Celebrimbor to let him inside, which I think is fine, because it shows it's a way of showing just how good Sauron was to manipulate people into what he wanted. And I think they kind of show that well. The umbrellas in this scene that the guards hold up do absolutely nothing for Celebrimbor, which I thought was hilarious. This elf guard is holding up this umbrella that looks like a leaf, and it's doing nothing in protecting Celebrimbor from the water. Like, Celebrimbor looks drenched in water, yet the guards look completely dry. So there's some weird reverse umbrella nonsense going on there. But then we have the big discussion between Celebrimbor and Halbrand, and Celebrimbor's really trying to say, like, look, man, Galadriel told me I can't trust you, and I really shouldn't have been talking to you, but, like, this just, we can't do this, you're gonna have to leave. And Halbrand's like, yes, she did say you would say that, and this is his way of now manipulating the conversation. Celebrimbor responds by being caught off guard, like, wait, you talked to her? And then he's like, oh, yeah, I totally talked to her. And the rings worked. Did you know the rings worked? And he's like, no, I don't know the rings worked. Yes, Celebrimbor, the rings work. Everything you did, it worked. Elves are safe. The world's safe. Now let's do this for the other races. And then that kind of foreshadows that, well, we can't give this to men because men are easily corrupted. And the dwarves would never... dwarves would want rings over men. Like, well, we could get the dwarves involved too. We got to get all the races involved. And so they kind of have this back and forth between the rings. Halbrand says, well, actually, to tell you the truth, because you're my friend and I trust you and I know you trust me, I'm actually not who I say I am. I'm not mortal. And Celebrimbor is confused. So then Halbrand does this whole, like, opening of the doors and turning off the lights and hiding in the shadows, and then does this big reveal that he is a messenger from the Valar and that he is actually Anatar, which is, I think this sequence overall was a good way to reveal it. I still wish that he was Anatar from the beginning, but they've at least done a good enough explanation as to why he was Halbrand and now he's Anatar. Like, I'll accept that believability behind it. It's still gonna be weird when Galadriel comes to Eregion and sees Anatar and be like, well, that's clearly still Halbrand, he just has a wig on. So, and then if she falls for it being Anatar, then that's gonna make her look kind of silly, because it's still Halbrand, they just have a really bad wig on his head. Like, and the wig doesn't look great. It's a really poor quality wig. The hair doesn't look real, and it makes his hairline, like, they cover his real hairline, and they bring it up further, so he's got this big old forehead with this wig line on the top of his head, and it just doesn't look great, to say the truth there, but he does the reveal. Celebrimbor understandably, like, totally accepts this when he's like, oh my god, you're a messenger from the Valar. Yes, let's make these rings. And he totally falls for it, and which I think they played really well. The scene itself is maybe a little bit awkward because it feels forced, but that also may feel forced because of, from the perspective of, well, we know this is supposed to happen, so it might feel forced that way, where to someone that doesn't know the story, it might feel a little bit more natural. Either way, I think it was done well. Aside from, I think they could... I don't like Anatar's outfit. I don't like his costume. It had this very also, like, Bible Jesus type thing that was a little bit weird, with this, like, rope belt and really bland robe and outfit. And I think they could have made it more intricate and more elegant. Have these nice, like, this pattern on his chest, because every depiction I've seen and I've read of Anatar, there's, like, this, just, like, some sort of elf-like design on the chest of his robe, and there's more stitching involved, and and sashes and all, and it just looks more refined and less just like, here's like some robe that we found in the gutter and we just tossed it on you, because it just looks so simple and basic that like a beggar would kind of wear, and not someone of, I'm a messenger of the Valar, so I have a lot of more status and I look the part. He doesn't really look the part right now. He sounds the part. The dialogue, the way he's speaking is great. I love it. And how he's able to manipulate everyone, it works for me. It's just the outfit. I'm not invested in the outfit and his design right now. And I don't know if they're going to change it at all, but I just wish that they could have done more with it. And then we end the episode with just Elrond has agreed to lead a small party to Eregion. Gil-galad has accepted because Elrond has agreed. However, Elrond is in charge. And that's the most important part here, is that Galadriel is no longer in charge. Elrond is in charge. And I think this is good for not only for story purposes, but it also goes hand in hand with like the viewers. There was a lot of pushback, myself included, to Galadriel's character in season 1, where she was just always angry, very, like bossy, and just didn't respect the people around her, demanded things, insulting people, forcing them to basically follow her into the northern Icelands and freezing to death, and just dragging people along on this trip and caring nothing but herself and her quest. So to bring her down a peg and put someone else above her will help the audience, I think, buy into her character a little bit more and just make her a little bit more likable. So I definitely think that was a good choice, whether that was an intentional from like, as soon as they were writing season 1, this is what they wanted to do, or if this is Amazon's response to the feedback at Galadriel. I think it was a smart choice to do this. So I hope we see that dynamic of Elrond's in charge, not Galadriel, and we'll probably see like some pushback of Galadriel trying to gain some power, but Elrond like, nope, I'm the commander here, not you, step down. So we'll have to see how that goes. However, it doesn't change the fact that this entire dynamic in the context of Tolkien is really weird. Like, really weird. Because he's married to her daughter at this point, or he should be. Galadriel and Celeborn are married. They have a kid. Lothlorien is basically being built, or should be built by this point. And Elrond is living with Galadriel's daughter. Maybe they have the sons, Elrohir and Elladan, at this point. I don't technically know timeline-wise, but they should at least be married or like in a relationship. So that whole thing is still really weird. I don't know how they bring her in, but they have to bring her in, because if Galadriel's daughter isn't in the show, then we don't have Elladan and Elrohir. We don't have Arwen, which means Arwen can't marry Aragorn, and then that just messes up with that entire story. So unless they bring in just a new character for Elrond, which just ruins so much of the story and the plot, though. Like, it's just, they can't just bring in some random person. She's supposed to be, the person that Elrond marries is supposed to be connected to Galadriel. She's supposed to be the daughter of Galadriel because of just the bond that it builds. So, I don't know, it's a little bit weird. So we'll have to see how it goes. But yeah, that's the end of episode 2. It's still kind of slow, but it's picking up a little bit. Still a lot of lore issues. The lack of quality shows in a lot of places, but you can see where they did spend the time and money. So I just wish that they did that more throughout the entire episode and the entire series as a whole. And of course, we did have season 3 released at the same time, or episode 3 released at the same time, so we'll talk about that in our next little episode. And of course, as this is being released, episode 4 has come out, so I'll be watching episode 4, and I'll see if I can post that this week. Otherwise, it'll be next week. Maybe I'll do it tomorrow. I don't know. We'll have to see how it goes, because this camera thing really messed with my entire planning for all of my recording stuff. But yeah, thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts. Are you liking it? Are you not liking it? Is there something you're still worried about? What are you most excited for? And leave a like, comment, share, subscribe, follow, wherever it is you're watching this. I do appreciate you, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye-bye.